Bills versus Eagles was close to being last year's Super Bowl matchup, and we finally get a chance to see it this year in Week 17. There's plenty at stake for both teams. Crossover Thursday starts now.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Bills and Locked On Eagles. We are both proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And of course, we want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Louis DiBiase, the host of Locked On Eagles. And we're here to get you ready for Week 17, where the Bills play host to the Eagles. Philly, the only team Sean McDermott and Josh Allen have yet to conquer. Louis, welcome in. I'm excited to break this one down with you.
Yeah, Joe, it's going to be a good one. I kind of forgot about that stat, and you mentioned this is like the Super Bowl I think everybody's been waiting for. It's almost if you're an NBA fan, kind of like LeBron, Kobe. It never happened year after year, and I feel like Eagles-Bills is due to happen, but I'm not sure. We'll see. Both have a tough road in this playoff.
Right. That's the question. You know, two teams that are battle-tested, but can either team get there as they both kind of have their warts this year? Certainly very capable teams, but I don't think we've seen the best of either Philly or Buffalo yet this year.
No, absolutely not, especially from the Eagle side of things. It's been the typical roller coaster season for this football team after they make or win a Super Bowl. 2018, 2023, 2025. They fought off a 2023-like collapse, so I think that's encouraging. But yeah, I think both teams are still trying to find their way, and the NFL is so wide open right now in both conferences that it's pretty much anybody's league right now. So I still trust the experience of both of these teams to make it far. But yeah, this is the most like parity-filled NFL season I've ever seen.
Well, Bills Mafia would like to know what the Bills look like after a Super Bowl, right? What does that even look like? That's the goal in Buffalo. So, Louis, as we do kind of laser in on this game and this week, Eagles, of course, have clinched the NFC East. It feels like they're going to be the 3 seed. What's the big storyline? What's everybody buzzing about?
Yeah, so there's still, there's likely a 90+% chance they're going to be the 3 seed, but the 2 seed is still possible. So if the Chicago Bears lose to the 49ers and the Lions, which I think is possible. The Bears play every game close, and those aren't pushover teams, right? So I think if they lose both of those games and the Eagles can take down the Bills here, there's a good chance that they could be the number 2 seed. And while you look at the wild card teams in the NFC, any opponent in wild card round weekend is going to be a tough. There's no gimme games in that conference. I think because of that, though, there's a good chance you could get home field advantage throughout the playoffs, even if you're not the number 1 seed. So getting the highest seed possible, I think, is really important. And every time the Eagles have been playing the playoffs through the Lincoln Financial Field in South Philly, they make it to the Super Bowl. So I think right now the big storyline, outside of them still trying to find their way on offense, is trying to get that 2 seed. I think it is really important in such a tough conference.
And Philly gets some big-time reinforcements this week in right tackle Lane Johnson, defensive tackle Jalen Carter. That's significant. That's not just getting anybody back. That's A-list cornerstone talent for the offensive line and the defensive line. And certainly we've all seen the splits of what this Eagles team is, what this offense is with and without Lane Johnson. It's a different ball team.
I think Lane Johnson, outside of the quarterback, is the most valuable player in this team when it comes to his value on the field when he is not there, the drop-off in production from that side of the football. So, yeah, getting their 2 best trench players on both sides of the ball back healthy at this time is massive. And I think the Eagles' defensive tackle group has done a really good job filling in for Carter. Jordan Davis, although he didn't make the Pro Bowl, I think is having a Pro Bowl season. Moro Ijoma, one of the more underrated defensive tackles in football. But getting Jalen Carter back obviously makes things so much easier for even those guys inside. And then for Lane Johnson, this team, Fred Johnson's done a good job filling in for him at right tackle, but they're just not the same without him. And so the run game's been getting going a little bit 2 of the last 3 weeks. Lane coming in at the perfect time. We'll see. I'm still skeptical of this offense because it was the Raiders and Commanders, but they are starting to find themselves. So Lane coming back, hopefully there's another level they can get to before the postseason.
It's like the typical Eagles season, like the highs and lows of Jalen Hurts, the wide receiver drama,
Yep.
You're wondering if anything's going to work on the team. Everyone's at odds, but then here they are. They've clinched the division. They're getting ready to go to the playoffs, and it's the weirdest business as usual as exists in the NFL.
It's toxic, man. I mean, this is just what happens, but I think there is a common theme to why this happens after a Super Bowl, right? They lose play callers year after year.
Yeah.
They either get a head coaching job or they get fired. And with the offensive line being so up and down this year, Hurts and Sirianni, they have obvious strengths that help you compete for and win championships, right? But they also have clear limitations that when things aren't going perfect, like 2023, like 2025, sometimes they struggle to elevate those things, kind of like, Josh Allen does a great job of elevating. I think Hurts has certain limitations, though, that makes this kind of a roller coaster ride. So I think when those two are the staples of your organization, this is kind of just par for the course. So I've come to accept it, but Philadelphia, I mean, they don't accept this kind of roller coaster ever.
Right. I hear that for sure. One thing that's always a little confusing to me and maybe others about the play caller piece on the offensive side of the football is, Nick Sirianni was an offensive coordinator. He's an offensive-minded head coach, but he's not a play caller. They've had, is it like 5 years in a row with a different play caller for Jalen Hurts, but an offensive-minded head coach? Can you make sense of that for people who maybe aren't as familiar with the situation?
Yeah, I mean, Sirianni, when they hired him in 2021, it was with the mindset that he was going to be a play caller. Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles owner, he wants the head coach being a play caller. Andy Reid, Chip Kelly, Doug Peterson, because I think that's how you guarantee continuity with the play caller relationship with the quarterback. But Sirianni, the first half of 2021, it just wasn't working, so he gave play calling duties to Shane Steichen. Of course, they were off and running there. It worked really well for a year and a half, and Steichen got the Colts job. And after that, Sirianni kind of embraced that CEO culture setting head coach role. And so since they've had to deal with this revolving door of Kellen Moore gets a head coaching job. The year before that, Brian Johnson gets fired. This year, it's Kevin Patullo. Is he doing enough to keep his job? I'm skeptical. So that's just the reality, and the Bills have faced it too. When your head coach is not the play caller, and your quarterback has these kind of limitations, I think you're setting yourself up for offensive inconsistencies, even when they have the personnel that they do.
Well, when it comes to the Bills side of this matchup, you mentioned the 90% chance of Philly being the 3 seed. Well, the Bills have a chance to win the AFC East, but they're going to have to beat Philly. They're going to have to beat the Jets next week. The problem is they need the Patriots to lose to either the Brady Cook Jets or the Quinn Ewers Dolphins. And so that feels very unlikely. Now it's I guess technically a reasonable chance, but wake me up when either of those things happen. Now the Jets and Patriots play at 1:00, so we'll at least know the result of that game before this one kicks off at 4:25. If the Jets win by some miracle, boy, this game gets to be very, very interesting for Buffalo. But to me, the story for Buffalo is it's Josh Allen's foot. And I'm sure many people saw the play last week against the Browns, kind of a 2-minute situation up against the end of the first half. They are in 2nd and 1, and Josh Allen takes a 22-yard loss on 2nd down and injures his foot along the way. Now, he finishes the game. He didn't miss a play. But the second half of that game, the Bills' offense did nothing. They had 3 straight touchdown drives to start the game. Then they had 60 yards on their last 5 possessions. They didn't get a first down for like 4 series in a row. And things were different. And obviously there were some drops along the way that contributed to that. And Josh Allen missed a couple of throws. It was a game that was tighter than it needed to be. But ultimately, I'm very concerned about Josh Allen's foot. And look, he's made light of every injury he's ever had. He had a broken hand last year and told everybody he was fine. He had broken hand in week 1 and then played like the rest of the year with it. It's not Justin Herbert situation where they need to make sure that this guy's injured. Josh doesn't want you to know there's anything wrong with him. Right. I think there's something wrong with his foot, Louis. And I will see how it goes. He didn't practice on Tuesday. We'll see what the rest of the week looks like. We're recording this on Wednesday morning. Mm-hmm. But this is very similar to a foot injury that he had a few years ago. I think he'll play. I'm not sure he should. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a limited version of Josh Allen, which is very concerning to me when you're talking about a really good Eagles defense where that full menu of dynamic ability that Josh Allen has with his escapability, with his ability to run, and really making Josh a pocket passer has me greatly concerned. So it's Josh Allen's foot. That's the storyline for me, despite, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen kind of making light of it during their media availability this week.
Yeah, we're going to get into matchups to watch in a minute here, but one of the things I was going to focus on is Allen's mobility, because that's, for both of these quarterbacks, the strength of this offense, like the identity of both units here. If they don't have their quarterback as a dynamic rushing threat,
Right.
I think it limits them. And Jalen Hurts, I was concerned about that after the Raiders game 2 weeks ago. He had an ankle injury. Looks like he's okay. He rushed really well against the Commanders. But yeah, these offenses just are not the same without that threat, especially the Bills with the lack of weapons. So that's going to be a big thing looking into this matchup.
Well, especially because the Bills' best weapons are tight ends. Well, who's the team that's limited tight ends the best in the NFL? Philly, right? The least amount of yards. Yeah. The Bills are really good. They're the second fewest yards. You have the two best defenses in the league defending tight ends, if you're into that kind of stuff, in this one. All right, speaking of matchups, we're going to do a big conversation about matchups in the next segment. So, folks, please be sure to stick with us. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, it's fast, it's available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Look, there's holiday sports going on. You're probably listening to this on Christmas Day, perhaps. There's a full slate of NFL games. It's going to be more exciting if you have a lineup over at PrizePicks, and you can make a lineup in less than a minute. The app is super easy to operate. It's going to make that whole process smooth and intuitive, and I love that you can choose from a huge range of unique stats, including fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. And deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps it all flowing. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills. Louis DiBiase, Locked On Eagles. Getting ready for Week 17's matchup between, the Bills and the Eagles. Let's talk matchups here, Louis. When you think about this game, what's that big matchup that you're thinking about?
For me, I'm thinking about the Eagles' defense against the Bills' offense. Obviously, Josh Allen's rushing threat is something to look for, but I'm thinking more about the rushing threat of James Cook behind him in the backfield. I think that's the identity of both these football teams is I think they're a run-first offense, even with the dynamic threat of the quarterback. James Cook and Saquon Barkley make these units go. And so I'm watching James Cook against Jordan Davis specifically and that Eagles defensive line, which has been a lot better the second half of the year against the run than the first half. I should say just in general, but the running game, the run defense had some struggles during that 3-game losing streak. Dallas, Chicago, even LA, to a degree on that Monday night loss, they've had success against the Eagles on the ground. But Jordan Davis has been one of the best run-stopping interior linemen in all of football this year, and I'm surprised he did not make the Pro Bowl. So, obviously it's, run defense doesn't come down to just one player, but if I had to highlight one guy on that unit, it is Jordan Davis against Cook. So to me, that's the big matchup that could potentially dictate this game.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of the things that I had written down with what I think is going to be a limited Josh Allen. It becomes even more about James Cook. It's been about James Cook all year, right? He's leading the league in rushing. He's got a good chance to win the rushing title this year, and they're going to have to lean on him in this game. And it just hit me. All those Georgia players on that Philly defense, I think they were probably teammates of James Cook. So there's a reunion of sorts here, but it's good on good, right? A good rushing offense against a pretty good run defense. Like there's been some chinks in the armor for sure of late. And I think where the Bills have to really get intentional is attacking the edges against Philadelphia and trying to do your best to limit Jordan Davis, who obviously is a freak show with his movement skills, but make him run as much as possible and see if maybe you can get some explosive runs down the stretch. I think you're spot on with that. James Cook against the Philly defense was high on my list. And as I get into my first key, you'll never guess what it is. It's Saquon Barkley against the Bills run defense. We all know the Bills run defense is not good. It struggles every year. Remember the Miles Sanders game in Buffalo? I think we all do, right? Yep. That got him quite the contract, right? It got him paid. But the Bills run defense has struggled for years, and it struggles maybe the worst that it ever has this season. And I think we can all agree that maybe Saquon Barkley's not having his best year, right? There's been a lot of inefficiency with him running the football. But the thing that scares me about Saquon Barkley is the big play, right? It's still there. 11th highest percentage of yards coming on explosive runs this year. And so while there's going to be some dirty runs along the way, he can hit home runs. You know what defense gives up home runs? The Bills. They get creased, and you get Saquon Barkley going. I mean, he's still Saquon Barkley with that size, athleticism, speed, elusiveness. And so the Bills have got to find ways to get population to the ball, and they have to find ways to get him to stop his feet behind the line of scrimmage and then get there, right? The Bills are not very firm with run fits. They're not very good at deconstructing blocks. They're highly inconsistent with tackling. Population to the ball and getting Saquon to slow his feet behind the line of scrimmage is going to be critical if they're going to limit him.
And that's been an issue for the Eagles' run game this year, is Saquon Barkley getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. Finally, against the Commanders, they had 0 negative runs, but that's been an issue all year, is getting Saquon Barkley to that second and third level. Because when he gets there, like you said, I mean, is he the same player as 2024? No, I think that was the greatest season a running back has ever had, right? But he is still that dynamic threat. You saw him rip off a 30, 40-yard run against Washington. He did it again on Monday Night Football against the Chargers a few weeks ago. So he still has that speed, that elusiveness, that breakaway ability. But the offensive line, the injuries, and the inconsistent play, they just haven't been able to get in sync this year with Saquon, especially in, runs up the middle of the field instead of getting to the outside. I think they've just been trying to find their way there. The last 3 weeks, so I will say, they've started to find it a little bit. And Lane Johnson coming back, as we mentioned earlier, I mean, that's huge. Fred Johnson has done, I think, the best job of filling in for Lane of any backup over the last 5 to 7 years, but it's not Lane Johnson. He's the best right tackle in all of football, in my opinion. So getting him back with the way they're building some momentum on the ground, I think that's huge. And that's still going to be the focal point and the identity of this offense, no matter what, because the passing game, it has their ups and downs, but it can't be the thing that carries this unit. So they're going to commit to that again against Buffalo, which, like you said, has been an up and down unit, to say the least, against the run.
Yeah, a lot more down. We don't have to sugarcoat it. This is a bad run defense.
Yeah.
What else for you, Louie? What else? What are the matchups here? I know we both want to talk running backs, but what else is on your mind?
Yeah, for me too, I'm looking at, A.J. Brown. As I mentioned, the passing game for the Eagles has been very inconsistent. But A.J. Brown, they've repaired that relationship. The first half of the year, everybody's talking about, are they going to trade this guy? I mean, he just looks miserable. He sounds miserable. The cryptic social media posts. He's going on Twitch and saying, don't pick me up in fantasy. Since then, I mean, 4 of the last 5 games, he's had over 95 yards. 3 100-yard games as well. He's under 70 yards away from hitting 1,000 yards again. So they found a way to not just force feed him the football, but get him more creatively involved, especially the last couple weeks. They've been getting him involved, using him in the slot, reduce splits. I think quicker passes, run after the catch opportunities, which I think the Titans back in the day did so well utilizing him in that way, but the Eagles really haven't. So they've been starting to figure out early in the second half of the year, it just felt like they were force-feeding him just so he would be happy. And now it feels like there's a real game plan for him. And so watching him against that Bills secondary, especially Christian Benford, not sure how the Bills are going to try to game plan this because, of course, the Eagles do have Devontae Smith as well, who's pushing for 1,000 yards. But A.J. Brown against Benford is going to be fun reps. And if he's playing on the inside, that's something the Bills are going to have to watch because I think the Eagles have done a much better job of creatively, not just using Brown as, a decoy on the outside. They're finally getting him heavily featured, and that's helped the offense turn around things the last month.
Yeah, it's Smith and Brown are both within like 70 yards of topping 1,000 this year. It's such a different offense than the Bills, where the Bills are everybody eats. Well, the Eagles are not that at all, right? It's
2 guys in the passing
Brown,
game,
Smith, Goddard,
and then
Barkley.
Goddard in the red zone, right? 10 touchdowns, but not much yardage wise. So
right, there's no randos catching passes, right?
Nope.
That's what the Bills offense is literally randos catching passes. I'm glad you highlighted that because I think this is a marquee matchup. A.J. Brown, bully receiver, and going up against Christian Benford, who's been really outstanding over the last 3 years. He was a little slow to start this year, but since week 6, he's turned it on. And he's had some great matchups against comparable receivers like a Nico Collins, like a Jamar Chase. He did a great job on Jamar Chase. Had a great matchup with DK Metcalf. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like. I think Brown's going to get his, but how much can Benford limit him? I think that'll be a big storyline to watch in this game. The last matchup for me before we flip the conversation to like the actual script for each team to win this game is the Bills and their pass protection. Protecting Josh Allen, who we've talked about. I'm anticipating a much less mobile version of Josh Allen. And even when he's healthy this year, like his ability to elude pressure is not what it's been in the past. I think that's not necessarily anything that Josh doesn't have, but I think it speaks to some of their limitations with their pass catchers and defense's ability to focus more on containing him in the pocket. And there's been a lot more Josh escaping and people being in his way than I've ever seen. So there's just been a lot more of a commitment to that. But ultimately, the Bills have got to protect Josh Allen. Their only prayer of going anywhere in the postseason is Josh Allen. And this is an Eagles pass rush that over the last 4 games, without Jalen Carter, is number 1 in sack rate. It's number 6 in pressure rate. Maybe there's some opponent factors in that, but if you go zoom out throughout the course of the year, they're still top 5 in those metrics. It's a pass rush that has been really good at finding reinforcements. Of course, Brandon Graham back. The trade for Jalen Phillips looks like a good one. And so the Bills, I think they have a good offensive line, but they have been choosy with how they pass pro. They'll give you 5-man surfaces. How they protect Josh Allen is not only critical for this game, but for any potential that the Bills have to go on a postseason run. So they got to be secure in their plan to protect Josh Allen.
Yeah, the 4-man pass rush for the Eagles the second half of the year, since BG came back, since Jalen Phillips was traded for, Nolan Smith coming back from IR, and even Jalix Hunt has been breaking out on the edge. It's been so much better. But one good thing for the Bills, Nakobe Dean, who's been, I think, the best blitzing linebacker in football over the last 2 months, probably not going to play in this game with a hamstring injury. Jahad Campbell was a Rookie of the Year favorite the first half of the year, so he's a good linebacker, but not the same kind of blitzer or guy to pursue the quarterback like Nakobe is. So that's one good thing to hold your hat on for the Bills, is that that's a guy that gets sideline to sideline that will not be in this game.
All right, we're going to get real specific. If the Eagles win, what do they got to do? If the Bills win, what do they got to do? Our thoughts on that next, folks. Be sure to stick with us. Welcome back, folks. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, of course, joined by Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles. A couple heavyweight teams matching up here late in the season. Let's play again. Let's do it again in February. Let's fast forward. I don't need to see the next, 5-6 weeks. Let's just get to February and play this game at Levi Stadium. All right, when you think about the path for Philly to get this dub as they come in as a slight road underdogs, I think the last I checked, the spread was 1.5. So, what do they say? The assumed 3 points for the home team. And so I guess in Philly, they'd be favored by 4.5. I'm not a math guy,
right.
but Eagles road underdogs nonetheless, your keys to victory.
Yeah, for me, there's 3 things the Eagles have to do to beat the Bills. And this is an important one. Again, if this was week 8 or week 9, I think the stakes would be higher. And I wish this game was earlier in the year, but getting that 2 seed's important. So for me, I think we talked about it with the matchups to watch with Allen's health. Don't get gashed on the ground the way you did during that 3-game losing streak. I think that was an issue against the Cowboys, specifically against the Bears on Black Friday. That was a huge issue. And then on Monday Night Football against LA. So if James Cook and Josh Allen are going to gash you on the ground and you're going to lose the time of possession battle, the Bills hold a lead all game, that's going to be a problem. That's not the way the Eagles are built to attack teams. They don't play well playing from behind. And so the defense, that's going to be the big thing. Jalen Carter coming back obviously is huge in limiting Cook. I think number 2, continuing to use empty set and under center formations on offense. Since, again, it was the Raiders and Commanders, so you have to contextualize everything. But since they started using more under center looks, they started marrying the passing and rushing concepts. Because it feels like earlier in the year, under center, they run. Shotgun, they pass. It was too obvious and predictable. Lately, it's been less predictable. They've been, I think, marrying concepts a lot better. Under center, empty set, Jalen Hurts is so much more comfortable seeing the field. As a mobile quarterback as well, I think he's more effective in empty set. Use those things formationally that have kind of been your identity in this turnaround of the last 2.5 weeks. And then penalties and negative plays. They've been, Joe, that sounds obvious, but penalties specifically have killed this offense. It feels like anytime they're gaining some sort of momentum, there's a holding call, there's a illegal formation or a personal foul. This team's been very undisciplined on both sides of the ball, but specifically on offense. So it sounds obvious, but those mistakes, those turnovers, those penalties, shooting yourselves in the foot, that has killed the Eagles all year. And so last week was a good step in the right direction of limiting those kind of mistakes, but this is a really good litmus test matchup against a good football team. Let's see if that was just because you played two bad teams, or if you really are all the way back. So this is a big one.
I think those are good keys. I'm a big under center guy. It's as a guy, I didn't play in the NFL or anything like that, but I have some experience with D-line stuff, and when they're under center,
harder on a defense. I don't like just in shotgun telling you what's happening every time. It just
especially with like Saquon, if you're gonna run the ball and he's taking it from that static alignment as opposed to pressing, like getting forward.
Exactly.
I think we're aligned on that. All right, here's what I have for the Bills to get this win and maintain their chances of winning the AFC East and forcing New England to beat Miami. Number one, it's got to be really about population of the ball when Saquon Barkley has it. I'm very concerned about him hitting explosive runs against this Bills run defense. And 25% of the runs for Saquon this year go for less than a yard. The Bills need to live in that world. Like, how do they do that? They got to build a wall. They got to get off blocks. They got to tackle. But those explosive runs have been such a big part of Saquon's career and even this year as well. So, can you run stunt? Can you gap exchange? What do you have to do to make sure that Saquon Barkley doesn't get ahead of steam and getting into the second and third levels of your defense? Number two is I do think that the Bills offensive plan needs to be run heavy and attacking the edges. I think a lot of what this Eagles team has in the spine of the defense at D tackle, at backer with Bond, and even Reed Blankenship, I think is a really good downhill safety.
Yep.
And I don't think you want to make this a straight ahead run game. I think you want to attack the edges. They're a little lighter on the edges with Hunt and Smith. There's explosive players. They have redeeming qualities, but if you can start getting bodies at them and then forcing Bond and Campbell and guys to start working lateral, I think that's going to be your best opportunity to be successful running the football. In fact, I have some metrics on this. Philly's run defense is 9th in EPA on inside the tackles runs, 17th outside the tackles. And so, they're not horrible in either regard, but I think you have a better shot. And the Bills are very good at kind of reducing formational width. They'll put a bunch of tight ends and blocking receivers on the edge and, really stress that. And I think the Bills need to try to do that against Philly. And then lastly, I think this offensive passing attack needs to be rooted in play action. It's hard to poke holes in the Eagles defense. Are really good, but they've given up the 4th most yards per play against play action passes at 8.3. They're 7th worst in defensive EPA per pass against play action. I think you have to leverage that, and the Bills are very good at executing play action. You have to leverage that in this game and see if you can't, move the ball and score enough points to get out of there with a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the Eagles secondary has been the strength of this football team this year. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean both made the Pro Bowl. But yeah, against play action, they've struggled. And I think Adoree Jackson, he's been solid, right? I think he's been, as good as Darius Slay and Isaiah Rodgers were last year, but he is still the weak link of that secondary. So if I'm the Bills as well, attacking him, I think, is probably the right move. And Marcus Epps at safety, they have a couple weak links in that secondary. So I don't think this is going to be, Joe, like a 17-10 low-scoring game, but it's going to be a close one for sure. Hopefully we get this one again. I think the NFL has been kind of waiting for it, and we'll see. But it's a tough road. This has been a weird year in the NFL.
You mentioned Darius Slay. I forgot about that situation.
Guys are holding him hostage from the Eagles, so yeah.
Well, what do you think the Bills should do? I mean,
it's funny though because the Eagles definitely were interested.
100%
going to pick him up on waivers.
That was the whole plan.
Yep,
and the Bills ruined it.
Slay's like, I'm not going to Buffalo at this time of my career, and yeah, that's the situation. Honestly, the Eagles, the Bills might have done them a favor though, because Adoree Jackson has played really well since, and I think he's probably a better option right now. So
you're going to know better than me, but I thought the series of moves, whether it was the Jair Alexander thing, the acquisition of Michael Carter, kind of that thought of, can we get Cooper DeJean maybe on the outside? I think all of that has been Adoree, get it going. And I think maybe the last 4 or 5 games, he's really turned the corner.
Thank God that he did, because if not, that was the idea was, let's just get Cooper on the outside. And I think DeJean's obviously a much better slot corner, but we need somebody reliable in the slot, because Adoree Jackson, Keely Ringo, Jacorian Bennett, everyone they threw on the boundary, it just was not working the first half of the year. But Adoree has figured some things out, and that's huge, because they were going to claim Slay and probably start him. And Slay hasn't been that great this year in Pittsburgh. So I think the best thing that could have happened. The
fit is really different, right? A man-heavy scheme in Pittsburgh, zone match with Vic. I mean, come on. Slay can still do that.
Absolutely.
So, but, that's the NFL. You get put on waivers, you get claimed.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what's got to be done. So we'll see if I think the Eagles have a little petty in them. So it wouldn't be a surprise to me.
I think both teams do. Yeah.
For sure. And that's why I said at the beginning, I think Josh Allen should probably sit this game. He hadn't beaten the Eagles, right? I think he wants to go try to do that. And we'll see how it plays out. And that whole Jake Elliott thing is also really weird to me. I tweeted out after, like, when they went for 2, I didn't think it was like to do anything, just try to run up the score. I think it was a shot at Jake Elliott, but it's like, hey, this guy's been struggling. He's 5 misses in the last 5 games. Let him kick the extra point and get some confidence.
No, I agree. The Eagles definitely have a kicker problem, which is not good heading into the playoffs. He missed 3 kicks in the first half last week, and it was the same kick, a left hook every single time. He was great the last time the Eagles and Bills played. He hit a huge
we remember.
One. Yeah. Elliott's
in the rain.
very hot and cold. Last year, even, he struggled in the regular season and found his way in the postseason, but it's not very comforting with the way he's kicking heading into the postseason. So we'll see. Hopefully he bounces back.
You kicker issues. You've had the same kickers.
I was going to say,
the Bills were on their third of the year. Michael Badgley came in there, missed the landing zone, doinked an extra
I'm preaching to the choir here.
They've worked out 3 kickers this week. Let's hope this thing doesn't come down to kickers. Let's make it about these great players: Allen, Hurts, Barkley, Cooks, and the likes. All right, this has been a wonderful conversation, Louis. Thanks for hopping on. And really enjoyed this. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Merry Christmas to everybody who's listening to this. Plenty of pre- and post-game coverage is going to continue coming your way on both Locked On Bills and Locked On Eagles. So whatever you want to get, you can get it right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to catching up with you again real soon.